Good afternoon and welcome to NMG News. I'm Rafael Ferrer.
And I'm Renata Zaragoza. And today is the 10th anniversary of NMG News. And to celebrate, we're going to take a look back in history in every continent of the world. But first, my word of the day is democracy. Democracy is a form of government where a constitution gives basic human and political rights, and is made up of a certain group of power that is chosen by people through elections. The country we live in, Mexico, is ruled by democracy, as we hold national elections every 6 years.
And my word of the day is capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system in which the trade of goods, capital, and services in exchange of profit are private. The main characteristics on what it's based on is supply and demand, and the competition without government interference. The US is said to be a capitalist country, although every day the traffic laws are getting more restricted by the government, allowing people to have less freedom. However, a clear example of a not so typical example of capitalism is the street sellers in Mexico, where they are allowed to sell without the government interference in most occasions.
Starting with the opposite of what these two words mean, we're going to talk about the Muslim empires. One of their firm, strict laws and basically no space for the use of democracy and capitalism. At the beginning of the 16th century, the dynasty of Safavids took control of the area extending from Persia into Central Asia, and unlike many other Islamic neighbors, who were Sunni Muslims, the Safavids became ardent Shias. The founder, known as Shah, became the king of a new Persian state because of the massacre orders of these and their conquests in nearby territories. Ottomans decided to advance against the Safavids in Persia, with their muskets and artillery. The Ottomans won a major battle near Tabriz, but some years later Tabriz was recovered. During the following decades, the Safavids tried to consolidate their rule through Persia and in the areas to the west, and many Sunnis were killed or exiled. In the 1580s, the Ottomans went on the attack. They placed Azerbaijan under Ottoman rule and controlled the Caspian Sea with their fleet. The Safavids were then forced to sign a peace treaty which decreased their northern territory.
Today we're on a time of innovation and modernization, but it is not the first time it has happened. In Europe, in the 18th and 19th century, there was a period or era that is now called the Industrial Revolution, and it changed the world. The Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain in the 1780s, but it took decades to spread to other nations. The five main reasons for this to happen were the Agricultural Revolution, the growth of population, the capital entrepreneurs that began to spend on research, the vast amount of natural resources in Britain, and the markets Britain could open due to their mass colonial expansion. Industries that developed during this time included the textile industries and the mining industry. As said before, this revolution has spread at different times and only reached other European countries much later. This gave Britain a head start, giving them superiority over other countries for some time. The main consequences of the Industrial Revolution include population and economic growth. Being able to produce more, the economic power of technological advanced powers increased because they could fabricate and create more resources and materials for less work and money, the division in social classes, and the creation of early socialism. An important character of the Industrial Revolution was Karl Marx, the father of socialism. He complained about the creation of harsh social classes and about the power capitalists has over workers. He demanded equality of rights and goods for everyone, and was very supported by the workers but extremely hated by the rich. Capitalism during this era evolved, becoming something more of consumerism rather than necessity. Democracy was evolving and becoming more accessible for various countries. This was the point in history in which democracy began to become more prominent in areas such as Europe. Going down to Latin America, in the 18th century, Saint Dominique, now Haiti, became one of the wealthiest slave colonies from France because of their big deposits of cotton, coffee, indigo, and sugar. The French Revolution had a great impact on the colony. Saint Domingue's white minority split into royalist and revolutionary factions, while the mixed-race population campaigned for civil rights. Led by former slave Toussaint Louverture, a slave revolt erupted on the French colony. The slaves of Saint Domingue used as their inspiration the French Revolution's Declaration of the Rights of Man. In 1795, Toussaint Louverture made peace with revolutionary France following its abolishment of slavery. Toussaint became Governor-General of the colony, and in January 1802 an invasion force ordered by Napoleon landed on Saint Domingue, and after several months Toussaint agreed to stop fighting. In 1803 he was arrested. Napoleon announced his intention to reintroduce slavery on Haiti, and Dessalines, a general, led a new revolt against French rule. With the aid of the British, the rebels won the fight against the French force, and on November 9, 1803, colonial authorities surrendered. Finally, in 1804, General Dessalines assumed dictatorial power in Haiti, making Haiti the second nation in the Americas to become independent.
One of the major problems we face today is the war because of drug trafficking. China was victim of the struggles of imperialism, and drug trafficking as a political tactic from the British to overthrow their old traditional empire and make their economy grow. Opium in North India had grown because of the British East India Company. It was then shipped into the Chinese markets. Demand for opium in China jumped dramatically. Chinese Governor Lin Zux wrote to Queen Victoria asking for the opium traffic to stop. The British refused, and as a result, Chinese forced traders to surrender in Jiangsu, a foreign area. The British responded first, making the Opium War start in 1839. British warships destroyed Chinese river forts, and when they attacked the Yangtze River, the Qing dynasty made peace. In the Treaty of Nanjing, 1842, China agreed to open coastal ports to the British trade with limit taxes, and they had to pay for the cost of the war. They also gave the Hong Kong island to the British. But nothing was said about the opium. Europeans now live in extraterritoriality. The Opium War marked the beginning of Western influence, giving a capitalist influence and a sense of democracy. Also, the more open trade between countries.
Police brutality today has increased substantially. This goes in complete contrast to what was fought for in the Civil War in the 19th century. In 1861, 1 year after Lincoln's election, the official Civil War had started. The war was divided into two factions: the Confederates, who wanted to keep old traditions, including slavery, and the Union, who fought against slavery. In the first battle of Bull Run, Confederates and Union forces fought each other, leaving clear that it was not going to be an easy victory. After a long conflict, the Union Army defeated the Confederate Army and declared that slavery was to be abolished. On April 9, 1865, the war was officially over. This conflict left the U.S. as a more democratic place, giving freedoms and liberties no matter which ethnicity you were. The freedom of slaves caused the creation of more jobs and more opportunities, leading to the modernization and making the United States become one of the great powers of the world.
Right now, as a terrorist group ISIS is taking over Africa as a main bridge for their operations, we need to talk about the colonization of Africa by the European continent 100 years ago. In 1884, Portugal asked the German chancellor Otto von Bismarck for a call to the big powers to negotiate and distribute Africa's territory. 80% of Africa was still under the own country control. The outcome of Africa's geography was its division into 50 irregular countries. The conference was held in Berlin on November 15, 1884, and 14 countries were represented. France, Germany, Great Britain, and Portugal were the great powers controlling most of Africa. The conference lasted until February 26, 1885. The major consequence Africa and the great powers went through was the division of the region by 1914 and the westernization of African culture. To conclude the topics from today, democracy and capitalism, we have to reflect how the governments improved by the end of the 19th century. Some Middle Eastern countries didn't improve and continued to have a totalitarian government and no freedom to the citizens for trade.
South America during the 19th century suffered one of its most iconic phases of all time, freeing their countries one by one throughout the 19th century. By the end of it, a major part had declared themselves a democratic republic, but although capitalism was in their ideals, most suffered because they were new to the concept and they struggled a lot in organizing these newly created republics.
China adopted a lot of Western customs, the most important being the concept and practice of capitalism, now allowing more people to pass through and make business. Although they left the strong empire style of government and tried to implement democracy, China still left the power to the governors.
The United States started to be more noticeable as time went, with a more democratic republic and an upgrowing country naming themselves the fathers of capitalism.
By the end of the 19th century, Africa was still ruled by imperialism, being very behind from other regions.
The Industrial Revolution was a huge factor in Europe, and it marked capitalism in a total new way. More democracy and new rights were implemented as it kept going.
And that's it for today.
Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time on NMG News. I'm Rafael Ferrer.
And I'm Renata Zaragoza.
And this is NMG News.